and welcome to another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Jamie Johnson, the legal and government correspondent for Western Wisconsin Journal, and today we have a guest who's running for City Council, Joy Knudson. Joy, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
And folks who recognize the name Knudson may recall that my most frequent guest over the last 16 and a half plus years, whatever that I've been doing this, is your husband, Dean Knudson. Now I get a chance to interview the better half.
Oh, there you go.
So,
thank you, Jamie. That's kind of you, and that's amazing how many years you've put in really a service to the community, because you help get detailed information out to people and give people a chance to share ideas, and that's appreciated.
well, and you know, you never know who's always watching, because we're taping it here in a studio. We don't have an audience, but it is nice to hear from the folks. And so that's the purpose here today, is to get them to know a little bit more about you, about the race. So you are running for the 3rd District.
That's correct. On
Hudson City Council. And these are 2-year terms, and last year, I think it was seats 1, 5, and 6 were up, and now it's 2, 3, 4.
Sure.
We have done the taped interviews for the 2 candidates that are running unopposed, 1 incumbent, 1 new candidate for districts 2 and 4 respectively. But you are challenging an incumbent, Paul DeZiel, is that right?
That's correct. Yes, I am.
And in District 3, let's see, we had handy dandy maps, and well, we're not certain whether these are the current maps or the ones that will go into effect as of the election. But we'll put this up on the screen for our folks, just so that they see your district, District 3, is all north of I-94.
It is, and that actually is the current map, the reformulated map. So prior, I lived in District 4.
Okay.
So right now, there is, but the city website does have a good link. They took a little time to transition, because people, technically, I still live in District 4 right now.
Okay.
But I'm running for the new District 3.
Yes.
And that's a result, of course, of the census and changing of the district. So it's a slight change for our neighborhood. But yes, so certainly finding that on the website is helpful too.
And a lot of people know this district as kind of the hill, right?
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so you've lived there how long?
Well, we've lived in Hudson a little over 30 years. We've actually been in the same home for 30.
Okay.
We moved in just before our youngest child was born, so it's firmly fixed in my mind. And I love that neighborhood. That's one of the reasons I'm running, is I want to represent my neighbors on the council. And I also feel that living there that long, I definitely know the concerns and the issues that are facing us in that neighborhood.
Okay. Well, we're going to get into some of those issues, but any other background besides having been, a Hudson resident this long, and as I mentioned before, the better half of someone who has been quite involved in the public sector. Sure. Dean has been city council person, mayor, and assembly. So what other things do you have in your background that you feel qualify you for this position?
Well, yeah, thanks for asking. Dean and I are both veterinarians, and we moved to town to start a veterinary clinic. So it's a very small town. I know that feeling of being a newcomer in a small town, but I loved Hudson, and I continue to enjoy watching it grow and thrive. So we started a business together and had 8 to 10 employees. Here in town, we have since sold that practice and have owned and operated another one in the county.
Okay.
So that business background, I think, is helpful, just because learn to meet the public. When someone brings their pet to you, you have to be a good listener to understand what's going on and figure out what's on their mind and what their concerns are. So I think that's a skill set I bring. I also understand, budgeting, expenses, things like that, where we have to sometimes delay a purchase just because it doesn't fit right now in the budget, and the ability to work with the staff and support them in their roles, not micromanaging people, but encouraging people to have their strengths, which I think the Hudson City staff, our department heads, are great at that, and I do feel that we're in good hands with the work that they do for us. So I feel like I can help to come alongside and assist in those areas and provide resources, or if they need further staffing. But the reason I want to serve is because I care about our town, and there's many decisions ahead of us as we grow. Expansion opportunities, annexation may be issues on the horizon, certainly, and we need to be careful and make good decisions about that. And I feel like I can contribute in that way, having been here as a property owner, a business owner. I've actually been a landlord also in our community, so I understand some of those issues as well.
Okay, well, is there an issue that the city council has dealt with in the last couple of years that maybe is part of your motivation for running, something that maybe you would have taken the council in a different direction on, or anything like that that stands out to you?
Well, I think certainly I want to be an advocate for the taxpayers, and I know that careful decisions, I mean, that's always weighs on people. There's regulations in place, levy limits and things like that, that our staff at City Hall work with to set up budgets, and the council has to make those tough decisions. But as we move forward, what sort of means, how are we going to use the available parcels that are still in the city limit? Are we going to consider annexation? I would like to be a part of those decisions, because I think we do need to continue to look at bringing good businesses, employers into the city for good wages and good paying jobs. Might attract more businesses as well. Those kind of build on each other. So that's an area I'm interested in. One area of concern I do have about the council, and I know the last 2 years with all of the difficulties of the COVID pandemic, is there's been a lot of extra stress and strain. And I know that they have worked through and managed some difficult situations. I think I would have made some different decisions at certain points about how they were handling those decisions. I want to really focus on the true role of city government, getting back to that really important focus about public safety and infrastructure, and less focus on other issues that aren't necessarily defined as a city role.
Okay. Very good. Well, you mentioned first of those. I've got public safety and I had infrastructure on my list to get to eventually. But let's start with the annexation, because as somebody who has been here, I guess as long as you have, that we've seen the city limits grow. We've seen the population double and more than double in that time. And so, and there's always folks who are saying we want to be careful about, you know, expansion of the city. Of course, that would be the case. But one of the things that when I've interviewed candidates and attended city council meetings is that there's a big concern about the limited amount of space that we have for further housing and residences, as well as commercial. And you know, we filled up those business parks very quickly, and the actual number of lots within the city limits is shrinking every month. So how would you look at moving forward, and keeping in context the comprehensive plan, which was passed, it's been adopted, how do you see those kind of, you know, affecting the future of Hudson? Going
forward. Well, I do think it's great that we have that comprehensive plan set. Many people contributed to that. Again, the trains, you know, the department heads certainly at City Hall, Plan Commission, they had public hearings, lots of input, surveys. So all that is really important, because we do need citizen input as we move forward. And that's something that I would continue to work towards, is make sure people understand the things that are coming on the horizon. The annexation is a tough one, because we have to wait for someone to come to us and say, I want to be annexed into the city.
It's basically the seller or owner's choice,
Sure,
right?
Exactly, or potential developer. So there might be a seller who would really love to sell their property, but the developer won't purchase it unless we will annex. And
so they come as a team, so to speak.
A little bit, yes, some of that. And of course, we have to evaluate, you know, bringing city services to them.
Right.
So, I mean, that has certainly, you know, yes, your service on the school board, you know, saw that issue come to the head with the Rivercrest building, because that was annexed in order to provide the school. So the city went, you know, quite a bit of expense to, and not all of our neighbors like that annexation, so that's a challenge, even though children come from those neighbors into the school. That's a challenge, is can we keep those close neighbors happy? And balance those needs. One of the challenges for Hudson is because we are such a hub that people come into our city for shopping, sports, all the fun events, which we want them to. You know, these are our neighbors, and we're in the same school district. But we bear the cost of maintaining the infrastructure for the large part. I mean, we are exploring grants. The city is working on trying to get infrastructure funding that might be available federally, but we have to be approved for that, and you know, hopefully it's available to assist us. So that's part of the balancing. And from what I understand, we have our pick of developers. You know, Hudson is so desirable that whether it's a new business, retail spot, homes, like you said, single-family homes are going quickly. There won't be very many available shortly unless we do annex more land. So we have, to make those careful decisions, we have the opportunity to say, no, we don't think this is a good fit, or this is going to be too noisy, or too much traffic flow for that neighborhood. And that's certainly a big concern for me, is considering traffic flow, because my district is in a very busy heart of the city. People
Right.
are coming and going from different parts of the city through District 3.
Right. District 3, though, has districts all around it. So
Yes.
there's not the potential, the annexation is going to be to the east and to
Very
the
true.
south.
Very true.
But people have to get there, and so
Right.
they have to go through these other
Sure.
districts to get there.
Right,
That's your
so
point.
Yes, exactly. Cooley Road on the south, Vine Street on the north.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Carmichael. And I have had some discussions with some of the folks at City Hall about some desired changes at Carmichael. I believe there's going to be a stoplight there to accommodate Hudson Physicians location.
Yes.
Because that's a tough corner coming out from, new neighborhood, many new residents, which I've spoken with, and they're all said, I'm concerned about getting out on the street when they're leaving for work or school. So that's an important development. We're also, partly because we're sharing, or we have shared that road, Carmichael, going north from the freeway with the town of Hudson, what's the speed limit, who's taking care of it. So, and I do believe that those details are getting worked out. So hopefully that will become more the city's responsibility, but also the city's decisions about what to do there, even though not all the neighbors on even the west side of Carmichael are in the city. Some of them are still in the town of Hudson. So
Right.
it's complicated.
Right. It is.
There, and again, good neighbors, longstanding residents of the town of Hudson, are seeing the city come out towards them, and I'm sure they have thoughts and opinions on that too. So it's want it to be a collaborative effort as we move forward, but having that comprehensive plan in place really helps us. And right now I think we have a clear goal to work on the 11th Street, Hagan Street Bridge, going
Right.
south over from RJ Meats, Taco John's.
Well, there's your
down.
transition to
Right.
infrastructure,
There you
right?
go. We
Yeah.
got it.
So
exactly.
because folks that have been here a few years, they can remember when we did Vine Street, and then last year we did
big
2nd
projects.
Street and Highway 35. So 11th Street is in the works, but that's certainly again something that will help connect the part of the city that's north of the interstate and that which is south.
Yes, it will, and make it safer. More lanes, facilitating walking and bikes better to cross over. So right now, and if interest, there's still some decision making being made by council members. In fact, there's a public hearing next week. I believe it's Monday the 28th, if I've got that date right, to discuss it more because there are several options. One of the things about that bridge is because it's over the interstate, we don't have complete responsibility for it. And those that do, the federal government, state, DOT, feel like it's still safe. So it's not that it's not safe, but we want better access. So they are not inspired, shall we say, to work on it right now. So the funding, it's our idea that we want to improve it for traffic flow, et cetera.
Right.
And so there's going to be some grant attempts. We're going to try and get some federal funding for grants. So if that comes through, that will be a goal, probably within a year to year and a half, 2 years, building cycle. Right. So hopefully that will come to pass because certainly those big projects are very costly.
Right, and it goes back to what you were saying earlier, is making sure that the project can be affordable, right? And
right,
we can pay for
yes.
it. And so when you get other sources, I know that's one bridge, and then we've got the other bridge, which is Carmichael, and the state doesn't seem to have a priority for that one either, and that's a lot more money.
Yes, and it is evidently one of the busiest stretches of interchange in the state, in terms of traffic load. Just sheer numbers, I suppose, per linear feet. I don't know how they calculate it, but it's tremendously busy. Police chief told me that stretch from the interstate north on Carmichael is the 5th highest for traffic accidents in the state, if I'm quoting him correctly. So we've got lots of people, residents and visitors coming and going, their businesses, deliveries. So it's critical, right? I believe this summer there is going to be a repair of the surface. So unfortunately, we'll be looking forward to lane closures and things like that. So our, again, city staff is working with the DOT because they will provide that project, resurfacing. Few years down the road, they may be rebuilding the whole interchange because of how big the demand is there.
Right.
So
So-
we're a little town with a big footprint.
Before I move to another subject, where are we at with any other infrastructure? I'm thinking downtown. What do you think of some of the plans that the mayor's introduced about raising the seawall and building a boardwalk and
Yes.
trying to reduce the amount of flooding on First Street? Where do you stand on
Well,
that?
I'm excited about that because I think that's one of the most unique things about Hudson. Our town is fairly accessible. Getting into Hudson and getting downtown, as we saw, maybe more visitors than we could handle for a while there when Minnesota was so restricted. But it draws people in the boating traffic, and people go to our restaurants and pick up groceries, or some people end up moving to Hudson because of how much they enjoyed it from the river. So I'm interested in that. I'm very supportive of it, and I'd definitely like to explore further the idea of the extension of Lakefront Park up towards Lake Malibu. That's going to be a joint adventure between Village of North Hudson and the county. So that remains to be seen what would happen. But I feel supportive of that because, again, it's such a unique offering that we have for us to enjoy and for visitors.
It's good for our residents and our visitors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
It's such a great place to be.
Well, and one of the things, my next subject is going to be public safety. So I'll gradually go into it, but we had the moving of the fire station. That has happened in the last couple years up to Ward Avenue. I think that in the end, that's going to actually be something that's better for the downtown because, again, opportunities for whether it's more parking, just greater accessibility overall to the downtown, and it's put the fire department in a more centralized location given where Heritage Green and all of the development south of the interstate.
Yes, I do agree with that. That's their access to the areas that they might service is definitely improved for certain, and that building there's now getting some bids for tearing it down for the old fire hall, which obviously that's been discussed in open council. So they'll be moving forward, at least parking for now, and then open for development. Again, that's the nice thing about Hudson is we do attract people. People want to be here, so we can. There's some creative ideas of what might happen in our downtown area. I really am in favor of trying to keep the historic appearance as much as possible, so that it has a nice blended appearance. We can enjoy that charm of the 150-year-old town that we live in.
Right.
So.
Okay. So while on the subject of public safety, because every year, police station.
Yes.
And I can remember, as can you, when we're doing this, this interview was a courthouse, and on the same block was the jail, and that all moved out in 1993, and now the county is proposing to expand the building because if they get another judge, they'll need more courtrooms and so forth, and our jail seems to be always full, unfortunately. But what do you think of the idea of the Hudson Police Department sharing space with the county?
Well, I would be in favor of that. Anything that can be cost saving, and I know they provide mutual aid or assistance to each other as needed. If someone is out on a call and they need assistance, a sheriff deputy will show up and be there to help our local police force, which is good. We want that. That's the thing about Hudson is there's so much shared responsibility and shared vision of what we want and collaboration with other agencies. Those are our friends and our neighbors, and I think if something like that could be developed, I think it's important because we've increased our staff for the police department, but we need places for them to sit down, have a desk, an office, and then training as well.
Right.
So I would be in favor of anything that can be more economically done by sharing is a good idea.
Okay. Well, where the police department is now is, of course, also a library building.
Right.
And what do you think of the developments there with, we've had years of back and forth with the funding, but you want to see the library stay where it is. It's such a beautiful location, very visible, and kind of, it's got an educational theme with the Phipps Center being across the street.
It's a great location because, again, it ties in with the beauty of the river and what makes us unique. So I know space needs are a concern. Obviously, at some point in the future, if the police department was completely relocated, that would provide more room in that building. I think the issue of the library funding is one that obviously people are grappling with and trying to decide. To have more funding for the library is definitely going to mean a tax increase. So the city has a levy limit that they're operating in and are hesitant. They have many things they need to spend the money on, so they're concerned, do we spend more on the library? Should we increase that? I do think if we rejoin the St. Croix County system, there's probably going to be an increase there as well. One concern about that, by the funds going to the county, they may also be distributed administratively or to other libraries in the county, and Hudson may not get all of our dollars back, even though we're paying in more. That remains to be seen, and I know people are negotiating that and working on it right now. So we have a problem with Hudson in the sense that we don't always get as much state funding as neighboring cities, which makes people feel frustrated. Well, why don't we have the library that River Falls has? The shared revenue funding, which I won't get into all the details, I know you understand it. The city of River Falls gets $2 million back from the state for their shared revenue funding. We get a little over $200,000 in Hudson.
But they're 10 times bigger than us, right?
Right. We'll have another discussion about that, won't we, Chief?
Right.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the comprehensive plan, public safety, library, and infrastructure. Now, and you are the only contested race, and you're running against an incumbent. We have, Mike Kennedy's at District 4. It's kind of the new District 4 and everything, and there's no opponent. But is there anything in particular that motivated you to run against an incumbent as opposed to, at a time when maybe it would have been an open seat?
Sure. I mean, it's definitely easier to run in an open seat because it's hard to run against a neighbor. I was not familiar with him before and with my opponent, but we've visited with him several times, and I think I want, because I've lived here long enough, I think I have a perspective that I can bring and some ideas that I would feel like I'd have a different way of viewing it, perhaps, because I've been a business owner, etc. But I was concerned about the mask mandate that was brought up last fall, which my opponent actually was the main initiator of that. I thought at 18 months into the pandemic to have a mask mandate for just one city building was not very effective, and I felt like it limited access to city services. The other day I was coming out of City Hall and had already stepped away when a woman approached the front steps and she wanted to pay her utility bill with cash. And she looked at me, she said, well, I don't want to put it in the box. And I said, well, you can ring the doorbell or call to come in, but there was restricted access to go into the building. And I feel, and then you do wear a mask in the building, which I'm comfortable with wearing a mask when people request that. But I do think that limited services for our residents, and that was a decision that I would not have made. Okay. So we have different ways of looking at things, and I think residents have a prerogative for a choice.
Okay. Anything else then, as far as why you're running or a priority that you want to see the council address in the next 2 years that we haven't already talked about?
Sure. Well, I would talk a little bit more about traffic patterns and safety. Again, while we are surrounded by other neighborhoods, people go through our district to get places. 17th Street, coming
Very
down
so,
from Vine, they got to get to the freeway, get to work. 11th also is quite busy, past Williams Park, down that access point. So I want to make sure that we're trying to do what we can to control speed and keep those roads in good repair. There's definitely, I'm hearing concern from families where their children want to walk to EP Rock, but they're worried about those crossing areas, and those are things that we need to still evaluate. I'd say one of my main focuses is definitely to spend money carefully. It's easy to see a project and love it, and we hope we're going to have a grant to help pay for it. If the grant doesn't come through, what's our decision? Where are we going to go forward? So I really want to direct our focus to the public safety issues, the infrastructure. Not that we haven't worked on it, but I think there's been distractions on other things, and we need to partner with the city staff in directing them on the things we want to work on.
So when it comes to, you mentioned infrastructure, you want to get back to kind of the basics of city government, of infrastructure, public safety, and then talking about in terms of budget and concerned about cost of things. They've already done the analysis and said, for us to do, the infrastructure to the level that we believe it needs, it's tens of millions of dollars. Can't remember what the exact number is. I think
over
it's 50, over 100. Yeah. So, what is your view as far as how would we go about paying for it? Are you in favor of bonding while interest rates are low, or would you like to see us pare down the size and maybe address what needs to be done in the next 7 years and then put off for longer term things?
Sure.
How
Well,
would
I
you
do
that?
think that we'll have to make those decisions. And again, we'll need our engineering and public works team to help direct us on really what's needed so that we spend the money wisely. I do think it's perhaps a list of everything, bring best practices everywhere. And so because we're an older city, we need to work through that process. And I think we just need to be transparent to our residents. It's interesting that Hudson has, 60% of our homes are owner occupied and 40% are renters. So, there's a mixture of people here, but everybody pays taxes because you pay your own property taxes yourself or else your landlord does and passes it on to you. So those costs affect everyone, and I certainly want to keep our city safe and well repaired, but we also don't want to price people out of their homes. And right now we're in a time of some economic uncertainty. Fuel costs are up, food costs are up. So I'm hearing that when I talk to people in the neighborhoods is, well, let's be careful, watch the spending. Yep. So yes, but interest rates, good point. The bonding, we need to make wise decisions on our incremental spending there and how we move forward.
Okay. Well, very good. I want to thank you for coming on, being a guest. I see we're at the end of our time. But we have the election is April 5th.
Yes.
People need to remember to get out there and vote. But
Yes.
thanks for coming on.
Thank you,
and being
Jamie.
on
I
the
sure
show.
appreciate it.
Good luck in the race. And I
thanks
just
for your
want to
time.
thank our voters, our viewers for watching, and hope that you can get out there and vote on April 5th, no matter what your municipality is. And thank you for watching.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Joy.